One of the things that I teach my daughters is that to have more peaceful and functional relationships in this life, there are certain key things that they need to learn and understand about men in general. Of course, there are exceptions to every rule, but there are still key things that apply for the most part to most men. And the first thing that I teach them is that men and women are completely different. The way we go about things in our lives, the way that we interpret information, the way that we problem solve, the way we view the world, the way that we behave, it's two completely different thought processes. Although we do have the same basic core human needs to be loved, to be heard, to be understood, to feel wanted, we go about that differently. Women tend to be emotionally based. They move based upon how they feel, whereas men tend to be more logic-based and ego-driven. Things need to make sense. And if you look at men when they're raised, typically when men are younger, they're not really taught how to process their emotions. They're not really taught what to do with their emotions. When you look at them when you're younger, a lot of times they're told, boys don't cry, man up, or they're called a sissy. They're taught to hold everything in. So although they do have feelings, they're not always necessarily sure what to do with those feelings or how to process those feelings. This would be why when a man falls in love, he tends to fall harder than a woman does. And I know many women disagree with that, but they do. When a man really falls in love, he falls in love. And that's because it takes a lot for a man to open up. It takes a lot for a man to be vulnerable because it goes against everything that he was ever taught. They're taught to shut down. They're taught to hold it in for the most part. So when a man takes the chance to trust a woman with his heart, to open up, to let the wall down, and to be vulnerable, it's very difficult because there's no logic when it comes to love. That's a very foreign area for them to feel. So that's the first key thing that I teach my daughters when it comes to understanding men. The second key thing I teach my daughters when it comes to men is that although typically men aren't that well versed when it comes to understanding or processing emotions, what they do understand and what they understand well is respect. Respect is everything to a man. It's the core of who he is. It's the pride in who he is as a man. Respect means everything to them. Respect is how they feel loved. That's what they equate to being loved. That's how they receive love. So when a woman that a man loves disrespects him, it's extremely damaging. Because again, for a man to open up, that goes against everything that he was taught as a child, because men are taught to hold everything in, to not show emotion. So when a man makes the choice to trust a woman with his heart and to be vulnerable with her and to open up to her, and she chooses to disrespect him, that makes a man feel like she doesn't care. She doesn't care about him. She doesn't care about his feelings. So he'll feel like he's not loved by her. He's not wanted by her. And once that happens, he's going to begin to detach emotionally. He's going to detach from that connection and from that relationship. Because again, for you to not show a man respect is the same thing as him not showing you love. When a man doesn't feel respected, it's the same thing when a woman doesn't feel loved. So the same way a woman will begin to shut down when she doesn't feel loved by her man is the same way a man will begin to detach emotionally and shut down when he doesn't feel loved by his woman. Disrespect is one of the most damaging things that you can do to a man that you say you love. And typically, once a man has been disrespected by a woman he loves, he's never going to view her the same way. He's not going to look at her in the same light. And there may be some people that were able to get back to how it was, I'm sure. But most men, they never view that woman the same. Most men, they're never going to give you the same version of him because he took a chance and you disrespected him. You took a chance and you showed him that you don't love him and you don't care about his feelings, because respect is what they equate, and disrespect damages men. So in my last video, I spoke about how one of the key things I teach my daughters to have more functional relationships with men in this life is to understand how a man views respect. And when I say functional relationships with men, I'm not only referring to romantic relationships. I mean men as a whole. I mean a mother raising her son, or the way he receives it from his mother. I'm talking about the brothers and the sisters out here, male-female relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, even your coworkers, your work relationships. I teach them this to have more functional relationships with men in general. So the first thing they need to understand is what respect is. So according to the dictionary, respect would be defined as to consider worthy of high regard, to hold in high esteem, to see high value in them. So when you show a man respect, that shows him how much you value him as a person, okay? To avoid harming or interfering. So when you respect them, you don't harm them. To avoid. Not to say they may not get hurt by things, because that's life, but you will avoid it. So the synonym for that is appreciation, consideration, honor. And honor means to uphold your commitment, to do what you've promised or agreed to do. So when I teach my daughters that men equate respect to love, respect is how a man receives love. That's how he feels love. So then I give them the definition of what respect is. And then to put it in perspective, I have to tell them, well, what does disrespect look like? So if we go back to the definitions of to avoid harm, you don't want to harm him with your mouth. You don't want to talk down to him. You don't want to call him out his name. Don't say things that's going to hurt his feelings. Don't call him stupid. Don't call him an MFer. Call him the B word. Don't call him gay. To speak about his sexual performance in a negative manner. To belittle him, to speak down on the size of his penis. All of those are disrespectful things that are harming. That's disrespect. To yell at him in front of other people, to belittle him in public. All of that is disrespect. All of that tells a man that you don't care about him. You don't care about his feelings. You don't love him. You see no value in him. You don't see any worth in him, because these are all words that define respect. So when you talk to a man in a certain way, when you do things with your behavior that you know is going to upset him, all of that can be taken as disrespect. And it tells a man that you don't care and you don't love him and you don't see value in him as a man. So in the last video, I stated how one of the things I teach my daughters is to have more functional relationships with men as a whole in this world is to understand what respect is to a man. Now, this is even more important as it pertains to romantic relationships, because again, for a man to enter a relationship and open up, it goes against everything that he was ever taught as a man, because they're always taught to kind of hold their feelings in. Men are told to man up, suck it up. So when he chooses you, and he opens up and he chooses you is an important part of this. Not he's in a situation that has become a relationship or whatever. When he chooses you, when he sees the value in you and he wants you by his side, for a woman that he truly loves, that he respects and honors, for a woman to disrespect him, it damages him and it causes damage to the relationship that usually can't be repaired. And some of these behaviors that could manifest as disrespect in a relationship is the same as previously speaking down to him, speaking to him in a disrespectful manner, because it tears him down. To belittle him, to speak bad about him in public, to yell at him in public, to call him out of his name,
to attack his character, to attack his sexuality, to attack his sexual performance. It could also manifest as if he confides in you about personal things or his feelings, and you take that information and you throw it back in his face at a later time during an argument because you're angry. Or you take those personal things that he has told you and you go tell all your friends, or you tell everybody about it when you're angry. That's disrespectful. The way that you behave when you're in public and you're not with him, because when a man chooses you, he sees you as a representation of himself. You are an extension of him. So the way that you choose to behave in public, that reflects on him, and it also tells other men the value that you place on the man that you have by your side. So the more respect that you show for your man based on your behavior and how you carry yourself in public, and the way that you choose to speak about your man and speak to your man, tells other men the value that you place on that man that you're with. And when you disrespect a man, more often than not, you cause damage to that relationship that's never going to be repaired. When you disrespect a man in a relationship and he has opened his heart to you and you stomp on it, you're not going to get the same version of him.
The next key thing that I teach my daughters when it comes to understanding men is number 3, men like life simple. Men like things easygoing. They don't do much with the chaos, the confusion, the drama. That is not how men operate. They like things very straightforward, which also leads to the 4th thing that I teach my daughters, is that men prefer to have direct communication. They don't do the hints or the subliminal messages. They prefer that you tell them straight what the issue is, how you're feeling, how you're thinking. They don't want to have to play the guessing game, because that causes drama, it causes chaos, it causes confusion. And again, men like life simple. And if you don't have the direct communication and it causes the drama and the conflict, because men like life simple, men will go to wherever they can find peace. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean he's going to go to another woman. Some men might go to another woman. But for some women who complain that their man is always on the game, my man's never home, my man's always hanging out with his friends, he doesn't want to spend time with you, then chances are it's because he doesn't find peace in you. Men will go where they can find peace. So again, they like life simple. They don't want to have to overthink things. And they like direct, clear communication because it keeps life simple and it prevents the chaos. It prevents them from having to overthink. So number 3 and number 4 is that men like to keep their life simple and they'll go where they can find peace. And number 4 is that men prefer direct communication. They don't want to have to figure out the hints or the subliminal messages. Just tell them what it is, 1, 2, and 3. They're problem solvers. They're logical thinkers. They need the cold, hard facts. That's how they operate.